Hey everybody, Jason Franklin here, back again. Expedition U got another episode, think 54 right now, and I have our very good friend Apurva with us today, and he is with Matador Lending, also Matador Realty, correct? And
Yep, that's right.
wanted to spend some time with him today. He is absolutely crushing it in the greater Houston area. And, aside from the real estate game, a lot of what he has to share today is really, it's going to work for you. Again, as we were talking about before the podcast, I don't care if you're selling vacuum cleaners door to door, you're selling electricity, if you're working at Best Buy, if you've got an entrepreneurial mindset, the things that we talk about today, I want you to find two or three good nuggets of information that are going to help you on your journey. And let's get started. Hey, man, how you doing today?
Doing well, man. Jason, great to see you guys. Excited to have this conversation. Let's go.
Yeah, I think you and I first met. We went out to a mastermind out in San Diego. What was that? Probably 5, 6 months ago, I think.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. California, good, nice weather. Didn't want to
Right
leave,
on the
but it was great
beach,
experience.
ridiculous
I know.
views. It was hard. I
Yeah,
mean, we're
kudos.
sitting here. Yeah, we're sitting in there like a bunch of entrepreneurs and like just randomly staring out at the people riding their beach bikes by, rollerblading. It's like something from a TV show with everybody up and down the strip on the beach. It was hard to stay focused, but there was a lot of great information, so that definitely helped. So
Yeah, I
we are
can't go to any more masterminds that are not on a beach now. Like that's the bar. That's how we got to do it.
exactly. Exactly. I think we've got one coming up. Matter of fact, I say coming up, it's in August. I talked with Jimmy, a mutual friend of ours, everyone, and they're doing another mastermind. It's going to be at his new place up in Utah, up in the mountains.
That's
So I'm
right.
excited about that. So that'll be good.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, we're going into a crazy market. All entrepreneurs are feeling the squeeze. I don't care if you're in lending, you're in real estate, you're again in vacuum sales, things are constricting. People are tightening up the purse strings a little bit. We wanted to kind of talk to you about your journey, how you got where you are, where you were great, and more importantly, where you weren't, so we can share those milestones with our listeners. And then let's just start there, and we'll go organically with where it takes us. So, how long you've been around in business? How long you been working for yourself? And how'd you start getting to the place where you're crushing it with the bull?
Yeah, no, dude. So I started, I'm gonna date myself, 2001. So 20
Okay.
coming over 22 years in this game. And I started in the lending business right out of the gate. I was actually lucky enough to land a gig back then. If you've ever watched The Big Short, this is when had no rhyme or reason. You just could sell loans, right? And so I had no knowledge about what I was doing, but got in one of those shops that would just kind of like smile and dial, pound the phone, and kind of sell loans. Well, I was doing that through college, so I actually worked through college full time as a loan officer and kind of learned the ropes at a great company at the time, and was lucky enough to use the income for that to pay for college. So I kind of walked out of with an kind of upper hand, having no student loan debt, so kind of was able to leapfrog my real estate career from there. I stayed with that company for 8 years, heading into the financial meltdown. So that company had gotten acquired by a company in New York. So I used that as a ticket to New York. So I moved to New York. And then immediately when I got to New York, I saw the writing on the wall that things were about to fall apart. We were getting like bill collectors calling our phones. And I was like, dude, I'm not in accounting. I don't know what's going on, but it was problems, right? So, but I was in New York. So I was like, hey, I'm here. Let me just kind of see where this journey takes me now. And so I actually ended up interviewing and lucky enough to get a job in the tech world in real estate tech. So I was one of the first like 60 employees at Trulia before it was acquired by Zillow.
Wow.
And so kind of jumped onto that side while the financial crisis was going on. So I was kind of like working at a tech company, so had all those benefits and all that fun stuff in New York. Lived there for a couple of years working at Trulia when the real estate market started to come back around and the financial market started coming back around. That's honestly where I caught my entrepreneurial bug, was in New York. It was a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem. The startup scene was crazy back then. And so it was just kind of cool to be around all that. When 2010, 11 started happening, Truly had gotten really big at that point. It was like 300 employees. They'd raised a bunch of money. It was like very corporate. And I was coming from mom and pop kind of worlds. So it just became too big for me. But simultaneously, the mortgage market was coming back around. So I ended up saying, all right, you know what? My time in New York is done. Moved back to Houston. And I wanted to start something for myself because I'd caught that entrepreneurial bug. Hence why got back into mortgage. and started building something. And I'll talk more about kind of the details around that journey, but that's kind of the long and short of how long I've been doing it. Been real estate investing along the way, by way of my family's kind of experience in that. So we've got some exposure to that stuff. And so kind of did all of it, right? So like did some lending, kind of understand the finances, the numbers of it, kind of used that to my advantage to learn about real estate investing and the mechanics of it. What's a good deal? What's a bad deal? And then ultimately kind of launched the lending business just a few years ago, actually. So I still had some kind of pit stops along the way, but all in lending. And then the real estate team was a byproduct of the lending business. We had so much action under our roof. And we were like, hey, this is an obvious crossover. We joined EXP, which is a great company, right? And so we built our team through there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think everybody at some point when you start building your machine and you realize you're sending dollars out the door somewhere else, right? So that you look at that natural segue and go, why am I sending all of these commissions out? Why am I doing all this and not, finding another methodology or another layer to the cake that we're building and cake that stuff in house? I mean, so I could see, I'm actually really, honestly, I'm really surprised that more, boutique lenders and stuff don't do that. They just keep sending it out.
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways, right? Like good mature real estate teams could build their own lending shops and vice versa, right? And it, I think there's kind of a stigma around quote unquote double dipping, which I totally get it. Some people are just kind of use the system to milk every penny out of that. That's not what we're about. It was actually just serving our client base. Like our people trust us, they know us, they love the service that we provide. And it was like, hey, yeah, we could handle that. And honestly, I forgot to tell the detail of my real estate license was literally I first got it because I just wanted access to CoStar. And I was like, I mean, we're buying commercial real estate. I don't have the keys to the kingdom. I've got to wait on a broker to give me the information. It was just getting frustrating. I ended up getting the keys, and within 2 weeks, and this is by no means any skill, it was just kind of fluke. But my first transaction was a $5 million commercial deal from a friend that said, oh, you got your license, you can help me sell this building. And then I made a conversation with another broker that I knew. And I was like, hey, I got this guy that wants to sell his building. He's like, oh, I know somebody that wants to buy it. I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I can do that for you. And boom, first deal out, out the gate within a couple of weeks was $5 million. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do this a lot now. This is awesome. So
yeah, I like this. This is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and then, then we matured into a team after that. So it was cool.
That's cool. That's cool. So, I mean, whether it's getting into mortgage, actually, I just had a conversation with a friend of ours who works for a large organization, and he's like, it just exactly what you talked about in your journey with Trulia. It's getting too big, and so like he works for this major company. He's like the number 2 guy in the greater Houston area for this entire company, but they're starting to micromanage, and they're coming into his offices, and he's like, man, I don't feel this, and I think I'm going to go independent. And I'm like, whoa, okay, wait a second. That's an emotional reaction. What are the metrics behind it? What are your startup costs going to be? So for the person that's got a 9 to 5, or if they're a lender or whatever they're doing, and they're thinking about, going out on their own, kind of what would you, if you had, if your son sat down in front of you, he's 25 and he's like, Dad, I'm going to go out and open my own business. What would you say are like the top couple, 2 or 3 things you'd say, this is why you want to do that, and this is what you need to be aware of?
Yes, that's a great question. So I think for many of us, there's some tipping point, some event that really created the spark, right? For me, without kind of naming names, I had a bad experience with my old company that motivated me, and it was not truly, it was just kind of somewhere in between, that like pissed me off so bad that I was like, you know what? I'm never going to answer to somebody ever again, period. And, we hear it all the time. Like I consider myself, and I'm sure you guys do too, I'm unemployable. Like I can't, I'm not going to dust off my resume ever again. I'm not going to ever interview again. You're not going to put me in a suit ever again. I'm just going to work myself. I'll figure it out forever. Right. Not everybody's built for that though. And there's good places on both sides. Like when I worked at Trulia, I got to jump on their rocket ship. Right. And I was like, these guys are way smarter than me. They're doing some crazy stuff on the tech side. I just want to be part of it. Right. And I want to be early enough to where I can kind of catch some upside on the journey. Right. And so that worked out for me. So I think everybody has a place in it, but kind of back to your point. Yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of people, there's just kind of this spark, pivotal watershed moment, whatever you want to call it, where it just initiates this kind of like passion. And you know, I always kind of ask everybody in the entrepreneurial journey is like, hey, like where's start kind of think a lot about your end game, because sometimes people just kind of dive in and don't really know where they're headed, right? I'm like, okay, well, where do you want to land, right? And I know sometimes it's hard to, nobody has a crystal ball, you can't predict the future, but it's like, okay, but yeah, I want to work for myself because XYZ, or hey, I want to build a mega team or a mega company or whatever the case may be, right? And everybody's got their different motivations, but like, you know, each journey is so sophisticated and challenged and so many moving parts. Like, you know, I deal with HR, finance, accounting, bookkeeping, like, you know, just logistical office space stuff. Like, yeah, that's all on your shoulders, right? And it's funny. I talked to a good friend of mine who's a consultant, and you know, he lives a great life, and you know, and in terms of, you know, but he works for a big company, mega company, right? And he was like, you know, I always kind of wonder because you're always on vacation, and when we go to, you know, go and you're always just your laptop's tied to you, and you're still like answering the phone call. And I was like, yeah, man, I keep the lights on. Like, there's nobody here. Like, it's me. Like, you know, if I don't pay the bills or I don't do this, like everything shuts off, right? And like it kind of like it was an aha moment. I was like, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Like, you don't have to worry about somebody's laptop like break in, and you got to figure out how to replace it and all these nonsense things that business owners have to think about, right? And he was like, yeah, man, it never really hit me that it's all on your shoulders. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't turn off. It's 24/7. You got to be a little cuckoo in the head to want to do this stuff, right? We're all wired a little differently. You know, you're just, you know, and to back to kind of one of your earlier points. When I met my wife in New York, I dragged her down kicking and screaming from New York, and made her a Texan. She loves it now. But you know, one of the first things I said, I was like, hey, look, I'm obsessed with running businesses. I kind of don't know how to turn it off. I hope you understand that. You know, I hope to make it up with you with other things, and hopefully the successes that we achieve will kind of offset some of that craziness. And she understood it, and we, you know, have a great communication thing. And she's the one that's pushed me actually to take further more and more challenges over the course of the years, right? And take on other organizations or other kind of endeavors. So yeah, but we're all a little crazy. That's all.
I love the fact that I love the fact that you pre-framed her. You know,
yeah,
sales.
Yeah.
Jack, you know, what's funny is I wanted to step back because, you know, he's talking about something that literally in our recent podcast with Fred Weaver, he, you know, their group, the 4610 group. And I asked him, I was like, you know, what does that reference? He goes, well, it references a Bible quote, and it is that begin with the end in mind, or begin with the ending in mind, or whatever. And that's exactly what you're referring to too. And that's a growing, and I hope it continues to grow, but that's a growing theme in successful entrepreneurs is you got to be crazy enough to jump off the cliff, right? But not until you've already gone through and looked at all the variables, right? You know, so you start at the end.
Well, that's kind of the whole theme. Everybody says burn the boats, but you got to make sure that you're not at sea whenever you do it. Otherwise, you know,
absolutely. Don't burn your own boat, right?
Yeah, don't burn the boat while you're in it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. Goodness. But also, I think it's important because whenever you reverse engineer things, you disallow yourself to be scared of your goal, versus if you plan for it and you say, okay, well, and you start with, I have to make 500 calls in order to get to that $200,000. You're like, okay, maybe I just dial that goal back. But if you're set at, okay, I'm going to make this much money, what's my next step? I need to close this many times. I need to go to this many open houses. If you're in real estate or lending, reach out to this many agents, make sure this many people know my name. You disallow being afraid of your own goal that you set for yourself. You don't cage yourself in.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, everything has a funnel of some type, kind of what you're alluding to, right? Like you break it down, you take the steps. What's the very next step is the thing. But I think a lot of times you get tunnel vision if you're not thinking about the end goal, right? Kind of back to kind of what we're really saying in all this, right? Is like, you know, like, hey, what is your motivation? Are you building a business to hand down to your children, right? Like you were talking about earlier, is that what's going to happen? Or are they even want it, right? Like that's a problem that a lot of people face, right? It's like you build something that's your passion, but it's not necessarily somebody else's passion, right? And so all that stuff, I mean, it's hard to evaluate. And most of us, like you said, just kind of dive off the cliff. I'm going to build something. Let's see where it takes us. Right. One thing, kind of a side point is we've been very blessed, and I'm sure you guys have too in your businesses, to create for many life-changing income and opportunities for their own families, right? And that's kind of indirect benefit of us crazy people that started it, right? Like,
Sure.
I think of Matador, our company, as a platform for really great high velocity salespeople to monetize, right? And say, hey, we're not a huge ship by any means, but we're rising our own little tide. So jump on with us, right? And so that's stuff you don't even realize, right? I mean, I've got people making multiple six figures times over. That's changed their life, right? And I'm like, they came to
Sure.
us as young pups, kind of out of college or whatever, and I'm like, wow, like I can't believe we were able to do that for you, right? And you didn't even think about it. I was just thinking about like, hey, what am I going to build for my own family and my own thing, right? But now we've got 20 employees, and we've got all this stuff and all these people who depend on us, right? And it's crazy. It's just crazy to think about when you kind of land at those levels.
Well, and I talk about this all the time. I love people building, but the reality is, there are those people who feel that they want to go out and share information. I feel the obligation to. When I was teaching martial arts, they always said those who can should. I always said those who can are obligated to. I feel obligated to share the 35 years of sales experience that I have with these young agents. I don't want them to go through what I went through. I want that fast forward button for them, where you can lay out the metrics and, you have that plan or those opportunities where you say, hey, listen, it took me 6 years to get to this level. I think if you pay attention and listen to me, we can have you there in 6 months.
Yeah.
That type
Absolutely.
of thing.
Would you say that?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Would you say that? I'm so sorry. Really, really, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, we took the punches, we got the gray hairs, we got all of it, right? To your point, let us shorten those frustrations, that learning curve for you to help leapfrog your success. And like, why are we doing it? Like at the end of the day, why are we doing it? Right? Like I could just keep all that stuff in my own brain, right? But no, we want to see that next person, that next generation of professionals, of family members, whoever it is that you're kind of inspiring and coaching up, right? It's like I already took the punches for you. Like there's no reason for you to do it too, right? So,
Exactly.
and everybody's got to kind of find their own journey too, and they'll take their own version of lumps and that they're going to get along the way. But good mentors, good leaders, help alleviate that, and it's just kind of in your DNA to do it, right? It's not. There's no really end. There's nothing reciprocal that's expected ever, right? It's just like, no, I've already done it. This is what you need to take from it. Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
Agreed.
No, I was just going to ask you, you pretty much touched on it, do you think that is the key to staying driven for being in business in the long term? I mean, you've been in it for 22 years now. Is that how you stayed motivated, is teaching other people, thinking about your family, and not like an inside driven goal, but more for other people?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, to be honest with you, because I think as you hit each milestone of your entrepreneurial journey, your motivations certainly change. Your purpose certainly changes. It evolves, right? Like when I started, I had no kids, I had a girlfriend and turned into a wife and started a family. We're worried about paying bills from the very beginning, right? Then we talk about, okay, well, now something's starting to happen here. What are we doing? Then we've got staff. Now we worry about their livelihoods, right? And we're like, okay, making sure you got enough to make your payroll and all that stuff, right? Those are things that just start to kind of mechanically, and then you start hitting a rhythm, if you're lucky enough, right, where your business starts to sustain. Now we're thinking about scale, right? And it's not necessarily always the monetary outcome, but one of the best benefits of running a successful business is there's monetary gains, right? And then it starts to shift into legacy, right? It's like, okay, well, we've built something special here. What's the longevity? Are we building a household name, or is that our objective here? Are we just doing something to serve our community? Like all these things kind of evolve along the way, right? And I think everybody's got their own motivations, right? I think kind of the latter end of it, giving back, supporting other entrepreneurs in their journeys, right? Like I've always thought about our company is there's people that are going to come in our doors that are going to learn and leave, right? And that's okay, right? I mean, to me, that's mission accomplished, to be honest with you, right? Because it's like, hey, we empowered somebody, we taught somebody off the street every piece of this business that they were motivated enough to know go and build it for themselves, right? And to me, that's success, right? It's not trying to keep people like locked to a desk and chained to it. I don't think that's practical. That's not reality. But I'd rather just, facilitate it, support it, and it goes, you get indirect return on those efforts. So I think, that's how I operate. And I'm sure many of us do, think the same way.
Well, I support you 100% in that. We lost a team member probably back in November. Super great guy. Love this kid to death. But when he came in originally, he was like, "Hey, listen, I don't want to sell real estate for the rest of my life. I'm here because for me, this is a machine. This is a mechanism to get to the next level that I think I want to go to." And I won't lie. I mean, you have a lot of agents that are brand new and they're young and they're in their early 20s, and you go, "Okay, sure. We'll see how it turns out." But to his credit, this particular one, and I told him, I said, "Here's the thing from day one, I will grow you up. I hope I don't grow you out, but that will happen sometimes too." And that's exactly what happened to this young man. He came to us, he had been 6 months in the game, which is nothing, but he had sold squat. And then, he took the lessons, he took the tutelage, he started, really, really grinding. And to his credit, within the next year, he sold like 11 million. I mean, like a year in as an agent. I mean, and what the metrics are. That's phenomenal. And then came and sat in my office the end of the year. And I mean, literally sat down and he got super emotional. He's like, "I don't want to do this." And I said, "Go ahead." Because I knew where he was going. I go, "I hear you. Go ahead." And he goes, "I got to go. I got to go. I got to go open my own shop. That's my next step." And I was like, "I support you. Go fly." And I love that. I mean, now, did I like losing 11 million in production? No, but at the same time, I'll be his number one cheerleader. I mean, and I love that because, you talked about legacy, and I think that is part of that legacy. And it's not, the legacy that we create is not always necessarily under the umbrella of our brand. It's feeding into those other people.
Absolutely.
Just like you would feed into your spouse or your children.
Yeah, and I mean, when we're old dinosaurs, right, and we're still kind of schlepping around, and people are going to say, "Well, where did your journey for that young man, right? Where did your journey begin?" He's going to say, "Well, I was on the Jason Franklin team. I did that. This is where I began, right?" And
Sure.
What's it all for, right? If it's not for that, what's it all for, right? I mean, we know how to make money, so that that will be. You lose 10 people, you'll find 10 more. Like that's what entrepreneurs do. They figure that part out. But those, at some point your name is all you have left, right? One day that's all you're going to have left, and how far and wide it reached is all that mattered, right? And so and most of us probably contain it to our own family. I think we're lucky to have all these professional relationships where our name continues to get carried on, right? And so like, how far and wide is up to us, right? but I think that's, I think there's something to that. I don't think that, that should be ever lost on people, that's sometimes what it's all really about.
Well, and I think that we all share that. I mean, I think it's, and I've actually read something pretty deep on this recently, but I think it's like, they say between like 47 and like 60, whatever, the male mindset. And again, not to make it, too specific, but basically you have this legacy question, which is why you have presidential libraries, which is why, the guy that went to Arizona University donates $50 million to have a building named after him. And they're like, you've kind of reached that milestone where you're like, "Hey, I have less time left than what I've already spent. So what am I leaving behind?" And whether that's, and hopefully it's in your family, it's in your kids and your grandkids, but everyone that you've touched is, I think, one of the huge benefits of the entrepreneurial mindset, when properly utilized, is to touch as many people as possible. But at the same time, don't get me wrong, I plan on making a grotesque amount of money, but I want to do it legally and ethically, and I want to impart kindness and wisdom and opportunity on as many people as possible. And I think you kind of follow that same mindset.
Wholeheartedly, totally agree, absolutely. And like I said, I mean, we know how to make money, right? We'll figure it out. one way or another, right? And like I said, once you get kind of past that, like, okay, can I support my livelihood and make sure my family's safe and all that fun stuff? Then it's just like a mission, like how far, what am I capable of? How far can I scale this thing, right? And some people level off, a lot of people level off. They'll hit their comfort zone and they're like, all right, I'm good. And then you've got crazy, Elon Musks of the world, right? That just go berserk, right? And so, I don't think any, at least myself, I'm not anywhere near that level, but I haven't hit my ceiling yet, right?
I
So
haven't
it's
peaked
all
yet,
now.
damn it.
Yeah, exactly. It's
So,
great.
all right. So, regardless of business, and we talked about this, and Jack and I have had a ton of conversations about this recently, contracting markets, constricting markets. What are you
Yeah.
doing in 23 to kind of like, I'm assuming you're kind of like me, I'm assuming you're kind of thumbing your nose at what everybody else is saying and saying, I'm still going to grow in 23. I don't care what the market's doing, we're going to grow.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we took a major punch last year, specifically in mortgage. I mean, everybody in real estate's affected right now, right? To the dollar, 50% down from 2021, right? To the dollar, like literally, which is painful, right? It's not easy. Luckily, having 20 years of track record in this thing, it's not as scary as it probably is for a lot of people that were born in the past 3 years into this business, right? They
Sure.
thought it was going to be raining forever, right? And so, yeah, no, I mean, we recalibrated, we right-sized our organization. Um, I was beating the drum kind of late 21 saying, guys, this party's not going to last forever, right? And so we started kind of at least planting the seed. I don't think most people still, really let it sink in until that pipeline started to dry up, right? And they're like, whoa, wait, now what's happening? For us, we've shifted into the fundamentals, right? Which I say it all the time. It's if your phone is not ringing all day, then it needs to be dialing all day, right? So,
Well, like that.
some of us that have a track record of like, long tenured relationships, professional partners, past clients, customers, whatever, people will call us, right? Especially 10, 20 years in this thing, people start calling you, they just know your name, they know what to call you for, your purpose and your business. Most of our young pups don't have that, right? So I'm like, everybody needs to know your name. You got to pound the phone, you got to make a ton of noise, right? And
Yep.
now this generation has an unfair advantage because they can cast a faster, wider net with social media, right? And so those are new fundamentals. That's a necessary piece of the business now. Like if you are not doing it, you do not exist, right? Because that's how everything is found, period. And so those fundamentals, I think it's different. Like to us, it was smile and dial. Some of us are old enough to remember what a phone book was, like open up a phone book, start count, right? There's a new version of that, right? Put out content, slide in DMs, have conversations. Like business transacts in Instagram now, right? Like it happens, like people are transacting that way, right? It's just the evolution of what we were doing with the phone book, right? It's just a new modern version of it, but it's the same thing. You're getting out there, you're having conversations, you're building relationships. We know transactions, especially in real estate, do not happen without a relationship being established. It's not the probability of somebody just finding you randomly on the internet and building an entire life-changing decision transaction with you is not going to happen without a relationship being established, right? And so it gets simplified if you have an online reputation that people trust, right? Hence why just building a reputation online for your personal brand, whatever, that makes it much easier. And you're just constantly putting out a billboard for yourself, right? And then people are like, oh yeah, I know Jason Franklin. I've seen him, his podcast. I've seen his this, I've seen him that. Wow, I'm talking to this guy. That's a whole different experience, right? Than like you pounding the phone outbound and saying, hey, I'm Jason, list your property with my team or whatever, right? Very different experience. So that's what we've gotten to. We've been preaching it from the ground up. Like if you are not velocity of activity needs to be 3x what you were doing when you were crushing it, because the market is down 50%. So you need to shift it in overdrive. We're going back to tracking the fundamental metrics, outbound touch points, meetings, appointments, proposals, presentations, quotes, like all those pieces of the puzzle that is our funnel of conversion. We're watching it to the granular step. And we just had a reality conversation. In fact, yesterday we had our kickoff meeting for the year. And I said, look, if you are not cut out for it, this is the year to go change industries, because a lot of
Yep.
people are going to leave. And, we're not going to be those people. We built this for our career. This company is a long journey. This is just a down cycle, but you got to shift your expectations and your activity and your velocity. So that's what we're doing. I mean, we're making a lot of noise. We're doubling down on social media. We're getting back to the basics. We're getting depth of product knowledge, neighborhood knowledge on the, like our relationships with our builder partners, like everything, like, you're just back to the fundamentals. That, sales is still the tail's the end of time. If you're not putting out a million shots, your probability of converting 500 is very low, right? And so, that's what we've been doing. Just back to the basics. And I hope that it'll pay dividends. The market is what you make it, right? If you want to just, fold in a corner and sit there and say, hey, oh my, the market's bad, and I'm just going to sit on the sidelines, good luck. But we're not doing that.
Well, and Jack and I have had numerous conversations about this recently, and that is, everyone knows. For HAR put out a statement. I don't know. HAR, for those that aren't local, is Houston Association of Realtors, saying that there was going to be a 20%. They were anticipating a 20% drop in agents and a 7% drop in sales. And I was like, well, that's 13% net positive. Let's go. But I think there is a very, very clear, not even an argument, it's just a statement that by getting back to those fundamentals and getting back in the grind of, hey, this is how we built it, this is how we're going to maintain it. But when you come out the other side, what right now they're saying is going to be, early to mid 24, you're a powerhouse. Right. Because when things pick back up and, maybe rates get back into high 4s, low 5s, you're picking up refi business and all those people that were paying 7.5, 8 or whatever, but then on top of that, you've gotten back to the nut of how you really started to begin with.
Absolutely. I mean, think back to when we were lowly agents that nobody knew our name, right? What were we doing? We were pounding the pavement, knocking on doors, kissing babies, everything we had to do to get a reputation established, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's the tail's end is time. Like you got to do that all the time. It's not going to change. It's just how you do it. Like it modernizes. That's what I was saying. Like, social media is modernized prospecting and you can cast a wider net faster, but the core is still the core, and we still got to do it. There's no question about that.
Well, and Jack, the 80-20 rule, because you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Social media, and you say that the younger people have an unfair advantage, which they do. But the problem is that the same people that were making phone calls are doing social media. The guy that's not going to make the phone calls isn't doing the social media either. Right. I mean, it's that 80-20 that is a tale as old as time. And, I tell people all the time that real estate and most entrepreneurial adventures are simple, but they're not easy. Right. I mean,
Right.
You got to put in the time, you got to put in the calls, you got to get there early, you got to stay late, you got to be willing to do what the next guy in line's not willing to do.
Yeah. Formulas and
Absolutely.
calculus. It's just long division.
Yeah. I mean, that's it goes even to service, right? Like if you think about good service experiences, 80% of it is just being over communicated to and appropriate expectations being set. Like if you just do that, you're on the top 5% of service and expectations and experience, right? People just continue to fail at it. And I'm like, why? Like it's just that simple, right? Like, yes, it could be a complex transaction. It could have 50 moving parts. But if you over communicate and you set appropriate expectations, everybody kind of works through it. But it's when people kind of run and hide from the tough phone calls and run and hide from, the challenging conversations. It's like, that's when shit just gets out of whack and out of hand, and people's emotions get, especially in real estate, it's highly emotional transactions, right? So the last thing you want to do is keep buyers and sellers and everybody freaking out and at closing tables or whatever's going on, right? It's so simple, right? Like that is all you have to do, right? That's 80% of it. The rest of it's transactional stuff, paperwork, getting people, herding cats, all that stuff is normal. But 80% of it is just communicating effectively, right? but that seems to be consistently the hardest part for people to figure out, right? And good teams like your team and what our team is aspiring to be, we just do that part well, and then the rest kind of falls in line, because then your reputation starts to kind of stand out, right? And then then time just takes its course, and you more transactions, more referrals, more business, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's just funny. It's that simple sometimes.
And that's really what it boils down to. I mean, it's the day-to-day grind, and I don't even want to call it a grind, because I mean, I guess early on, while you're building the fortitude of doing what we do, but other people, I've shared the story, and I won't go into detail because I've shared it 100 times. But I've got a buddy that's a NASA engineer, and he's like, I don't know how you do what you do. You never know where your paycheck's coming from. And I'm like, I don't know how you do what you do, because you know exactly what your paycheck's going to be. That would gross, but it's not even a grind anymore. It's just what we do. It's kind of like working out.
Yeah.
How many people this week are walking around with sore legs? Right? It's January. It's the first week of January. They all went back to the gym. How many people will still have sore legs next week? Not very many, because they stopped going. But if you can push through the uncomfortable portion of getting started, it's lather, rinse, repeat. It's just what we do. And what's that song? All I do is win.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean,
like
not to get the. Go ahead, please.
There's
no,
a lag.
it's on you.
I was just gonna, like, not to catchphrase it up, but like some of the fundamentals, sales in itself, right? Being a salesman, just like you said, like not knowing when your next paycheck's coming in. What we preach at our organization is you live by the pipeline, not by the deal, right? So we obsess over what's my pipeline. If you wake up in the morning, you have 0 prospects, well, then you should be really worried. But if you wake up in the morning, you got 1 deal that's going sideways, but you got 10 behind it, okay, we're going to keep moving, right? We'll work the problems out, work the issues out. So that's just something that, we teach, is like, that's the bigger problem. We're hunters, right? And you got to constantly keep feeding every meal. Just because you ate your last meal, you got to worry about your next one, right? So like, you got to consistently be hunting, right? And so salespeople just kind of need to shift in that. I think that applies to just fundamentals of business, right? Where's that next strategy? Where's that next, where's the revenue coming from? Right? Where's your growth coming from, right? But those are the things that I think we teach, on a regular. And I think, sometimes it takes time to learn that that's where the focus should be. Because we have a lot of people get obsessed over one transaction and like, oh my God, this thing is happening. Or sometimes you count the big one and you're like, oh my God, I got this big $5 million deal. I've made it. And, I'm sure you guys teach the same, like, we don't count a deal until the money is in the bank. Like, it is funded,
100%.
closed, check is deposited, right? Because things go sideways. We have a deal right now. The day of closing, we had a lien pop up. The day of closing, like a lien popped up. Now we're 6 weeks out for them to figure this thing out, right? And it's a nice $1 million deal. Everybody was happy, and I was like, I'm telling you, don't count it till the money's
Not in the bank yet.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So we always love to wrap up, and I know in any business, but especially in the real estate game, I'm sure that you have. And again, we no names. We're not going to put anybody on blast, but
Sure.
you have just a funny, like, you're never going to believe, like, sitting at the bar, you're not going to believe what happened at work today. You have a deal that just went weird, sideways, funny. There's something we can walk away with, something humorous.
Yeah. So I'll tell you an interesting one. And it's, I think there's lessons all around, and it's kind of on the real estate investing side. So like, we had a great client that was looking to acquire some land to develop, right? And they're building some very interesting large scale developments, right? And so we worked really hard for them to identify a lot that fit all their boxes, and everything was fantastic, right? We end up winning in a multiple bid situation and got the thing under contract, right? Great news. Everybody's winning. We're starting to do our due diligence. It's a commercial deal, so there's feasibility and all this stuff going on.
Sure.
And moving all along, and we get to where our feasibility is about to expire, and we needed to ask for a short extension because we needed some time. And mind you, this is a multi-million-dollar deal, so keep that in mind, right? And so my client, the seller's agent called us and said, hey, okay, we talked about it. Even though we had multiple offers, we think you guys are going to get us to the finish line. Everything's going to be great. Yeah, of course we're going to close. Don't worry. But we need another few weeks or whatever. They said this. All right, we'll give a couple $1,000, right? A couple $1,000. I was like, all right, sounds very fair, reasonable. We'll go ahead and make that conversation. So I call our seller's team. He has a team, by the way. And so like there was a team that because it's a big scale deal. So, hey, here's the situation. Everything's great. They're willing to do it. It's a couple $1,000. One of the team members throws a fit about the couple $1,000, right? So he was like, hey, I just don't think we need to pay that, right? And I was like, I mean, I hear you. I know it's a little annoying, but it's, in the grant, this, by the way, it's like a $3 million deal, right? It's like a couple $1,000, whatever. So he's like, hey, see if you can just get that waived. I said, okay, fine. I was like, I don't think you should do that, but I will try. So of course I called the agent and I said, hey, look, don't worry, we're good. Everything's gonna be fine, but they really just don't want to pay the $2,000. Do you think we can get that down? Can you cut it in half? That's what we asked for. Make it 1,000, right? So he said, all right, I'll call you back. So he calls him, like literally the afternoon goes by, haven't heard from the guy. Should be like a 5-minute phone call in my opinion, right? So I was like, all right, what's going on? So I call him back like late in the afternoon. I was like, hey man, just checking in, where we at? Because we got to file the extension today. Or contract's about to expire, whatever. And he was like, hey man, I got bad news. I was like, what's up? He's like, the seller just feels like you guys are penny pinching. And
I knew you were going there.
Not extend. And we're taking the guy behind you that's going to pay cash and close in 2 weeks. And they've removed all their contingencies and we're not extending. And I was like, what? And I was like, no way. So then I called my guy. I was like, dude, pay the $2,000. Like, what are you doing? So I called him back. I was like, hey man, don't worry. They're cool with the $2,000. Don't worry. By the way, we burned like architecture money, like all this stuff, right? So very, very penny wise, pound foolish, right? Like to the T, like classic, like version of it, right? I beg, plead, does not happen. We lose the deal over $1,000, right? And this was a multi-unit apartment complex development, like huge multi-million-dollar thing, right? Over $1,000. And it wasn't even the principal that made the decision. It was kind of one of his like finance dudes that was just like kind of butthurt that we had to pay the extra money. Anyway, so that one was a hard lesson. The silver linings, since we ended up finding another location, did the whole thing, learned our lesson, took the punches, but it was such a universal like lesson to be learned, right? That constantly, and I tell the story always to now new customers, like, hey, let me just tell you about what happened this one time when we got a little too nitpicky, right? And that was one that I still like to this day kills me because I was like, it was a home run location. Checked all their boxes and they got in their own way, right? And so yeah, I mean that was one that I will always take away with me, and it's probably one I'll be teaching my kids down the road. Like, like, when you got a bird in the hand, don't worry about what's in the bush, right? So, but yeah,
you should just take like a canceled. You should take like a canceled check for $1,000 and just like void it and frame it and just hang it on the wall so you see it every time you walk past it, just to keep that lesson fresh. Because that is
I'm telling you, man. It was so bad. I was ready to pay it, right? I was like, I'll just pay for it. Like, I don't care. Like, this is so crazy. And they were like, it was too late. I mean, rightfully so. The agent on the other side was sharp, right? He was like, look, man, if y'all are playing games over $1,000, y'all know retrades, right? We're retrade where the 11th hour negotiation. They were like, maybe you guys are going to be retrading us at the 11th hour. Like, this just doesn't make any sense. If you were ready to close, like, $1,000 shouldn't have mattered to you, right? And I was like, I can't argue, man. You're right. So,
well, whoever was throwing the fit in the boardroom there on the team, I'm sure they got lambasted when behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It was a painful one. But yeah, lessons learned, right?
Absolutely. Well, hey, Apurva, super, super pumped to have you here with us today. Love the information that you shared. Hey, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, maybe they want to get in the lending game, maybe they're looking for an amazing lender, they want to get in the real estate game, how can they reach out to you guys?
Yeah, so our name is Matador, right? We're like the bullfighters. So matadorlending.com, matadorrealty.com, either of them kind of same place. My emails are easy. It's just my first name, APURVA at matadorlending.com or matadorrealty.com. Reach out. I'd love to help out. I'm all over the social media stuff. My jam is Twitter. I don't know if you guys are on there, but that's where I'm at. That's most
I
people
do
kind of
everything
interact with me
except Twitter.
I'm going to tell you all this, and this is a nugget. If you're not on real estate Twitter, which is a little pocket community, you are missing out. That is where the action is at. Y'all
Write
need to
that
get
down,
on
Jack.
there.
Yeah, I got that.
I'm telling you, there's some they call them lurkers. Sorry, I don't want to like drag it out, but there's lurkers of like high value clients, investors, develop, you name it, that just kind of poke around, and every so often they'll just like come alive and start asking you based on a topic. And then I'm like, I talked to a guy that's $1 billion private equity shop out of nowhere. And I'm like, what? Like this, I mean, I didn't even know if he has no presence. And it's just out there. It's real estate Twitter. You got to get on it. I'm telling you.
Consider it done. Awesome. Well, hey, everybody, thank y'all for tuning in today. I know you had some great content today from Apurva. You've got his contact info. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you come back and listen every week. We're on episode 54. Plenty of backlog if you're new to us. And don't forget to share us with friends, family, and complete strangers. Have a great week.
We'll see you next time.
Appreciate you guys.